Bruce Molskey, October 13, 2000. The context I've developed in my own mind for this interview is comes from a quote that I read in a Mike Seeger article that he wrote about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the line really struck out at me because it was funny. And he said that there are maybe 5 to 10 musicians in America today who are playing old-time music full-time and making a living. And the number varies depending upon how you define old-time music and how you define a living. Yeah. And so I'm going to come back a little bit to your first efforts to play out, some of which I've read and reading up on you, and kind of start with your larger career. First of all, how did you come to Rounder Records, which is maybe the primo roots label?
Well, I guess I was beginning to, after many years of just playing for my own pleasure and playing gigs, and I really never had any kind of vision for myself as a career musician. But at one point, I decided that I would like to at least see if it would be possible to take this one step further, and I was always convinced I couldn't make a living doing that, but just what if, and I guess it was a little bit of wanting to get my music out there a little bit, and so I just wrote to him, called him on the phone, whatever, and I said, would you be interested in doing a recording? I was going to do another recording anyway.
You had done the Merrimack tape, right?
I'd done, well,
smaller things?
I've been involved in a lot of people's projects over the years. I guess my first solo recording, or recording that featured my music, was a self-produced one on Yodel 80, which isn't really a label. It's a bunch of friends that all needed a label.
Right.
And John Herman has become the de facto executor of Yodel 80 Records. But yeah, I had that recording, and people liked it, and I thought it's a good vehicle to help me get gigs, because that's really a lot of what recordings are about. I mean, that's the catch-22 in the music industry, especially for smaller acts that aren't going to have tons of corporate money dumped into them to develop them. You need a good recording to get gigs, and you need gigs to convince a record company to make a recording. And that's the glass ceiling that everybody seems to hit. And I don't know whether that was that I hit Ken Irwin on a good day or whatever it was, but he said, hey, yeah, sure.
And he said you called him or you wrote him? You wrote him?
I think I emailed him. I can't remember the very first meeting.
Okay.
But, if you know Ken at all, you know that the way you communicate with Ken is by email.
Right.
And he was real nice about it, and it was a lesson. I wanted to learn about that side of the music world. I knew nothing about the business of the music industry. Still feel like I don't know enough about it. And I like exercises. I'm an engineer, I wanted to go through that process. And part of part of what made Lost Boy very exciting was having the opportunity to go through that process and see what's involved, and screw myself not reading the contract right and all that kind of stuff.
Did Ken know who you were, or did he just...
He knew who I was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I didn't come out of left field. But
Right.
Turns out I had kind of a quiet reputation among traditional freaks.
Okay.
And, but, I've never had any kind of aspirations towards being a traditional music star. But what I do want to do is I want to put this music on the map. I mean, for everybody. And I always felt like I had something unique to offer, So recording just seemed, recording with a label that would get me some distribution and a little bit of that kind of notoriety seemed like a good idea. But it wasn't any part of any kind of master plan or anything.
Right. Did you still have your job?
I still had my job, but I had decided at that point in time that I was going to leave.
Okay.
And so I kind of timed it, because Ken wasn't, no record label's interested in a part-time musician.
Right.
They want somebody who's touring. And as Alison Brown says, the record industry wants people that are living in their cars. 300 days a year.
Okay. And I was going to ask you, did you have discussions with Ken about that you can recall?
About
by email, like what your plan was?
Well, yeah, absolutely, because that was part of how part of what I felt was a good argument to convince him to do this. Being that I was planning on leaving my job and pursuing full-time music in 6 months or a year, whatever it was, and this would be a good thing for me, and I thought that it would be a reasonably good investment for Rounder to give it a shot.
Did he talk to you at all? This was 95 or so when you made the...
Would have been 95, because Lost Boy came out in early 96.
Yeah, okay. Did he talk to you at all about the climate, the commercial climate for what you want to do? Or did that go on?
We talked about it more in terms of my touring a CD like that and making it work that way. But Ken is very, very conservative, almost to the point of pessimism sometimes about what it takes to succeed. About how hard it is to succeed, and I mean there was a good lesson in that. I think he's a little over conservative. I started producing. I produced quite a number of CDs of other people at this point, plus my own. And the first time I talked to him just for some advice about it one time, and he said, "Well, you're going to have to do that for free for a while until people, know who you are." And I thought, I'm better than that. And the first person that I had gotten a little bit of a reputation for production because my 2 CDs sounded good. Yeah. I have a wonderful engineer, Ronnie Freeland, who I think the world of, and so somebody called me on the phone. Who the hell was it? Might have been Andrea Hoyt, great fiddler from D.C. And she said, "I really like the sound of your recordings, would you produce for me?" And I thought of what Ken said, and she says, "How much do you want?" So I named her a reasonable price, what I thought was fair. And she said, "That's fine." The lesson in that is, and this goes for performing musicians even more, is that if you take a gig for a very little bit of money, the chances are you're going to get treated like you're nothing special. If you talk somebody into a huge fee, they treat you like a star. It's the same people. and that's exactly it. If you berate yourself by selling your services or doing what you do for less than it's worth. And part of the whole trick is knowing what it's worth. Yeah. In a not only in a monetary way, but just in kind of a holistic way. It's like, what have I got to offer?
Did Ken talk to you at all about sales expectations, or did you talk? The two of you talk about sales expectations for an initial
We took a little bit, but my spiritual advisor through this whole getting into the music industry for me has been Kathy Fink, who's a dear friend of mine, and she's quite savvy on the music industry and has been doing it for many, many years. And she gave me some real good advice. Not watch out for Ken kind of advice, but these are the kind of things that you're going to find important. And one of the things she told me is that an advance that an artist gets is pretty much based on how many copies the label thinks they can sell. Right. And that's that is usually, and then sometimes they're right about it and sometimes they're not, but the advance isn't just it's not something that gets pulled out of the sky in the traditional music industry anyway.
Sure.
I mean in the commercial music industry, of course, like Tom Pittman was saying this morning, they just throw money at anything.
I guess if they want to get you,
if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. It doesn't sound very organized, but so when Ken came to me and said, "Well, this is how much we would be willing to give you for an advance," I had already talked to Kathy, and that told me, well, he thinks we can sell this many copies,
right.
And that was way more copies than I had sold of Warring Cats, just promoting them on my own, right. And selling them out of my basement.
Sure, okay.
And that sounded good to me.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Now, do you have to produce the record out of that advance, or did they then front the recording costs?
A typical advance covers, if you want to hire a producer and spend it on that, sure. Okay. That's your business.
Okay.
But it covers basically the expenses of recording.
Right.
And everything associated with that, up to but not including mastering.
Okay. So yeah, that money was for you to get your record made.
Yep. For me to give them a pile of final mixes.
Right. Okay. Did Ken stay out of the process, or did he? I mean, he produces a lot of Rounder records.
He did not produce. He stayed out of my first two CDs, Lost Boy and Big Hoedown. But he took more of an active role in Poor Man's Troubles, and I think that's because he liked it.
Okay.
He had a lot of he listened to the masters and came back with comments.
Okay.
Which was the first time he ever really had done that to any great extent. And we went through a few iterations of tweaking certain things in master recordings to make him happy. And I was happy to have that input from him. That tells me he's paying attention. Okay. Plus, he had some good ideas.
He's not a musician. What type of comments does Ken make?
He's a good listener. He's a good listener.
So he's might be a suggestion.
Things like noticing that there's not enough impact in a vocal line, that some words got garbled.
Okay.
So of course, in a studio, on a modern board, you can goose those notes.
Right.
He likes for the lines to start strong.
Okay.
So what they call entry. He likes to punch the entries a little bit on certain lines so that they're a little stronger. Now, this is all standard musical industry stuff, but that he's a good listener in the sense that he knows what it takes for the music to grab somebody, and those are the kind of comments that he made.
Did he see the Poor Man's Troubles CD as one that could move to an echelon beyond what the others had?
Well, yeah, but also because my career had been moving.
Okay, right.
I'm doing more, not necessarily better, but more visible kinds of things, right. Things that involve a larger audience now than I used to. That, to me, that doesn't immediately translate to better.
Right.
It's just different.
Sure.
And I'm getting out there more. I will, by the end of this year, I'll have been out something like 205 days. And I'm pushing it very, very hard, and he sees that, and I think he appreciates it.
Sure. What role do they play in selling the records? Now, I know they get it into their distribution system, but
right.
It's very. I see it as pretty light, unless you're an Alison Krauss or something, for a whole lot of catalog.
And I think your observation is probably right. And I'm going to get myself in trouble by saying this, but it's. I think Rounder has kind of a stable of artists that the Rounder partners are smart enough to know that they need a certain kind of person on their label to help define who they are, and they're passionate about that. I mean, that's just not something just that they do. That's what the label was founded on, and it means a lot. Most of my dealings have been with Ken,
right.
And I know that for Ken it's absolutely true. I mean, when he redid George P. Graham, which was Rounder 0001. Meant 30 years ago, and redid it onto a CD. He was very excited about that. It's a big thing to him, and he loves the old music and what it's about, and he likes for people to think of that, even in a marginal way when they think of Rounder Records. That's the link to tradition, and people like me. I mean, that's I think that's a lot of what. That's one of the reasons that I would be considered for a label like that. It's not just sales. As far as promotion is concerned, to get closer to your question. Rounder has a promotion department. They have a publicity department. I have no idea, besides the Alison Krausses of the world, who gets, how people get decided to be, a particular artist gets pushed. You know what I'm saying? But I do know that when I call on them, if I stay in touch on a regular basis, then they help me more. It's like anything. It's an organization of really, really busy people, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease in a situation like that in a lot of cases.
And what can they do for you? What would you call on them for?
They provide some tour support.
Not money.
Not to me, but I know that they've done it for others.
Right.
And once again, that depends on the contract that you strike with any label. I'm not talking just about Rounder. I mean, it's something I've learned about the industry.
Right.
Artists, bigger artists, very often will get a promotion budget that's associated with their contract. I never had the sense to ask for that stuff. I didn't know what it was.
No, it's a pitfall too, isn't it? Usually recoupable, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
So then you're it's like, should I have an agent or should I promote myself? Should I have an organization? It's the same kind of trade-off.
What have they done for you, if you ask them to?
Well, for instance, there's a radio guy there named Dan Gay. He hasn't been there that long. He replaced Shea Quillen, who was there for quite a while. And these guys, they do advanced work. They will arrange for radio interviews, like the one you're fixing to carry me over there.
Ask you, who arranged it? Rounder?
Rounder arranged. Well, what's happening this weekend is kind of interesting because independent of each other, Rounder arranged for the interview at, actually they arranged for an interview for me at 9:15 tomorrow morning. The one at 11:30 this morning, which turns out to be with the same station but a different show, was arranged by my hosts here.
Okay. Oh, you're on Folkways tomorrow. That's the biggest one,
yeah. So I'm going to be back at the same station twice, and I wonder when I'm going to piss off. But you don't take those opportunities lightly. I appreciate it when people invite me, and I want to go.
Yeah. Right.
But Rounder does stuff like that. They have a person that does the same kind of work within the media, in printed media. I think her name is Joanne Kelly. She's new. And there's other people in that organization. So you get to know them, and I send Rounder my schedule. I have a website, and I always send them an email whenever I update my schedule on the website, and then I'll, it's like any kind of business. You got to follow up and say, hey, I'm really interested in promoting this particular show. Can you give me a hand? And more times than not, they will. Sometimes they say get in line, but they're busy.
Yeah. Now they've got they're doing a two-tier distribution system. I don't know how familiar you've gotten into it.
You're talking about the business of Universal?
Universal?
Yeah, my Poor Man's Truffles CD arrived, and it's on Rounder Select.
Rounder Select.
And I had to do a little investigation to find out just what that was.
What did you learn?
Well,
Bill described it to me as in some ways a different label within the umbrella.
Yeah.
How does it work?
Well, it's obvious that Universal has some kind of interest in Rounder. I don't know what the arrangement is. I don't think they want to talk about it. But I do know that some of the more major artists with Rounder are still on Rounder Records, and that's being distributed by Universal, and that stuff is being pressed by Universal, by their pressing plant. The ones that Universal, I don't want to say because that's a negative way of saying it, the ones that Universal didn't pick up are the ones that Rounder chose not to give to Universal.
Right.
The smaller or more traditional artists like myself are on Rounder Select, and we're still going through the old system. Things are still they're still going to the same old pressing plant that they went to before, which is fine.
Yeah.
Because it's a good arrangement. But that's my understanding. So you get artists like, of course, Alison Krauss, Baba Toujours. The Cajun thing is a lot bigger now, so they're on Rounder.
Right.
And then you get people like me, and I can't think of any other examples right now.
Dirk Powell solo?
Dirk solo, yeah, exactly, is on Rounder Select.
Right.
Yeah.
Tony Trishka's reissues, at least. I'm not sure about his current.
I haven't been keeping up with this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. How do you get out there and sell yourself? I want to get back to Mike's statement. How do you make a living? You get 205 days you're going to be out, you said, this year, you think, based on current bookings.
What's my business plan?
That's a lot of days. Well, who books you, for one thing? Do you do it yourself?
The vast majority of it I do myself.
Okay.
And I do not want that to be true for the rest of my life. But once again, it's been a really good exercise learning that aspect of the business.
Uh-huh.
And what I've learned is that there's lots of different ways to do it, and that you need to present yourself in business the same way you want to be seen on the stage. As far as your business ethics and how you deal with people and how responsive you are, and whether you do the things that you say you're going to do and mean it.
Right.
Because the music industry, like any other industry that's concerned with money, has its share of bullshit and share of people that are trying to get the most out of the least amount of effort. Right. And I cultivated a relationship with a lot of the club owners and a lot of the festivals and venues and stuff like that. And I developed this program of workshops, and what and producing. I discovered that as a trad artist, if I don't want to have to sell out and and if I want to be able to do the things I want to do, I've got to kind of spread out the palette of things that I can offer. So I'm not just a solo guy who just plays small coffee houses, or I'm not just in Big Hoedown, just playing for festivals or dance weeks.
Right.
You know, it's made me kind of dig deeper into myself to see what I'm capable of offering.
Now you're talking about the instructional things, for example?
Yeah, I have this 2-day instructional workshop that is a great anchor. It allowed, you know, it pays my airfare and expenses and anchors me for a tour.
Right.
So I mean, my whole thing with that is to get that kind of teaching work in conjunction with concerts. Right. Concerts help to sell the CDs, you know, and it becomes a kind of I find myself doing a whole lot of different kinds of things on one trip, which is great. It makes it interesting.
Right.
You know?
Sure.
I don't want to be the kind of guy that just rides the bus every night playing another concert in another place, doing the same thing all the time. I'd go out of my mind.
Do you sell more CDs at the gigs than you think, through the stores or other?
Oh, that's typical. Yeah, except for the biggest artists who get major promotion.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely sell way more on my own.
Okay.
I do a good job of it.
Yeah.
I work at that.
Yeah. Now, when you how much of your work do you think? There's going to be some gray areas here, but I guess I want to get a sense on how much of it taps into things like art centers, how much of it taps into the old folky network that's still been hanging on. Are there distinctions, I guess, between the types of places that hire you?
There are different types of venues. There are different kind of microcosms of the industry. You know, they're the folk societies.
Right.
You know, there are the small clubs, and all those guys kind of keep tabs on each other. Each one sees who the other's presenting. I don't think that the folk festival circuit is going to look that closely to see who the folklore societies are presenting in concert.
Festival, yeah.
But the festivals keep track of each other, and the folklore societies keep track of each other. What you have to do is identify all those different worlds and decide where your show is appropriate, and target that. You know, there's no point in going after something that you won't fit into. I mean, that's a waste of time, and it doesn't make anybody happy. But that's, I'd say for me, you know, I teach at several camps in the summer times. In fact, I'm teaching at Mark O'Connor's camp next year. I'm very excited about that. I teach several camps, and camps lead me to my individual during the year workshops, and the individual during the year workshops lead me to certain venues in the same localities, you know, clubs, things like that, and then I just let that lead me around by the nose until I see what's out there.
Right. It seems like it's going to require a lot of legwork over time.
Tremendous amount of work. You have no idea.
I
how
mean,
much
you're
work
down
it
in
is.
Virginia. Well, you know, the Pacific Northwest must seem like it's in Asia or something when you want to find out how to pull together some clubs or some societies.
Well, what happens? You know, the internet makes the world a lot smaller, and so do telephones, for that matter. I mean, you get to know people in a locale,
right?
And you call on people and say, "Hey, what else do? Where else do people go around here? What else people do around here?" And you get to kind of know the scene. Right. This is all agenting work. This has nothing to do with the music making that it displaces in my case.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
if you're doing it yourself.
I get more playing done on the road when I can be alone and don't have my office staring me in the face in my house. I rarely play music at home.
Yeah.
Unless I'm working on a particular project or a recording session or something, you know, working on a deadline. It's hard. It's hard.
How have you used the focal lines? I don't mean to use it a bad way. How have you made use of the focal lines? What's it provided to you, if anything?
Connections. I was very disheartened the first time I went to the Folk Alliance because, once again, I was naive and I didn't know the industry and didn't know what to expect.
What year was it? What city was it in?
It was the first time I didn't go as a performer or an exhibitor, but I just went because it was in Washington, D.C., which is where we live. Right. And we just went down there for an evening and ended up taking a room in the hotel and not leaving. And had my wife and I, Audrey, we had a really great time. And so the next time, I think went to the one in Memphis. It was the first one we actually planned to go to, and I shared a booth, as has kind of become tradition, with Kathy and Marcy.
Okay.
And kind of pool our efforts there, and had an exhibition and done some showcases and things like that. And Folk Alliance is the kind of thing that is designed to be used. That's why people are there. Why I got a little disgruntled the first time was because I thought that you I was naive. I go to a place like that, I play good music in a showcase, and somebody hires me. Well, it doesn't work like that. You have to spend. This is one of the deceptive things. You got to spend doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter what you play, what you look like. You have to make yourself visible, and the way you do that takes time. And it has to take enough time to where people think that you're not trying to make yourself visible. They just kind of know about you. And that takes years.
Yeah.
So you've got to show up at Folk Alliance for a little while and people start recognizing you, and you start recognizing them, and you just slowly begin to build that network of relationships.
Right.
And so the Folk Alliance for me, the second and third time it has gotten me good connections. Some of them turned into gigs. Some of them just turned into good connections.
Right. You made a few comments last night that were kind of caustic asides about your role in the universe. One was.
What did I say? I was really tired.
Just one. I thought they were. And I may read more into this than normal people do because I'm very attuned.
Right.
For a self-reflective comment on your role as a folk musician. I think the first thing was when you got on stage and you made your joke about having you wanted to hide your Palm Pilot and your cell phone.
I got on the stage and I picked up my fiddle and I saw all that stuff laying there, and it just seemed incongruous to me. So I just had to say something.
It is. I mean, incongruous because of the music you're playing, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't meant to be self-deprecating at all.
I didn't think
it
it
was
was
just
that.
like.
But just.
I hope it didn't come across that way.
No, it didn't. But we're in another zone now. We're in another time frame right now. We are We are going to remove. It was a reference to the fact that we are all here. I thought to remove ourselves from these types of things.
There's some of that, but in my case, where I'm out doing this all the time, I rely on my cell phone. Mm-hmm. There it is.
Right.
I rely on my Palm Pilot. Yeah. I rely on all that stuff to help me to put myself in a situation where people want to forget about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right.
And it just struck me funny.
The other thing was, the reference to Guess Who's album, the Jimi Hendrix tune, ended up on it.
Oh, I didn't mean anything by that, you know.
And, I forget the last. Although one thing that struck me was when you talked about, when you introduced the Ed Haley tune you played early on in the first set, and you said, all revivalists, old-time musicians know this tune. And I was struck by
There was a little bit of that was kind of a cut.
Okay.
Not a cut, but, you know, all right, you're talking about the tradition industry. Right. This is good. Because I'm, that was kind of my way of, you know, the old-time music revival scene, whatever you want to call it, you know, I used to hate when people called me revivalist because I don't like being put in a box.
Mm-hmm.
I almost got in a fist fight with a dear friend of mine because he called me a secular humanist one time. But we have our top 10, and recordings come out, and we all jump on them, and we learn music, and you know, it's a finite set of old source material that's out there, and so everybody's always got their nose in the air. When somebody like Ed Haley comes along, you know, it's natural we're all going to jump on that stuff. But I guess all I was really doing was I was thinking about the fact that everybody plays a few Ed Haley tunes now because John Hartford's been out there letting people know about him. And it wasn't really a slam, but, you know, I was a hippie. I was one of those people that wanted to not be like anybody else. And so what I ended up being was just like another group of people.
Right. Right.
You know?
I guess what I'm saying, all of these things, and please understand, this is going to come out sounding different than I want it to sound, But all of the comments having to do with I should have hit the cell phone, or this is what all revivalist musicians say, sound like you have an awareness of who the audience is and what their expectations of you are.
Totally.
And okay.
Totally. And I want them to see me a certain way. I mean, I never thought I would really care about stuff like that. Part of my desire to put this old music on the map is giving it some meaning in the present. And I want people to see the fact that I use a cell phone and a Palm Pilot, because they do too.
Yeah.
And it makes it okay. That makes me a window for them into something that they might not have so much access to. They don't have to feel like it's incongruous to drive a brand new car and go in a fancy office and work on a computer all day and then come home and listen to scratchy old recordings. That one thing does not preclude the other.
Right.
It makes sense to me. That's how I lead my life. And I want people to see folk music as not something that's dead, that's trying to be revived. The Irish music scene is the greatest example of that, because it's alive and vital, and young musicians are treated with great respect, because people know that they're going to be old musicians someday.
Yeah.
They live long enough. So, I like for people to see this as more of a continuum.
Sure. So I guess, do you think the term revival has kind of run its course, really, in a sense? I think that's what you're saying.
For me, it is, personally.
Yeah.
But there's certainly plenty of old-time musicians out there that still treat it as a revival. Mm-hmm. And that's fine.
Right.
It's however you choose to do it. It's just the music makes sense to me in the context of my life.
Right. You said you learned from Tommy Jarrell. How much of an opportunity have you had to play with some of the guys that would be considered by revivalists to be the source material that's constantly changing?
Well,
the old-time revivalists are now the new source. Mike Seeger is now a traditional musician as opposed to a revivalist. But how much opportunity have you had to play with guys that would be considered nowadays source material?
Of course, there's not nearly as many of them around now as there was before, but I was blessed. I mean, I got to play with quite a few people. I always had a shy streak as far as that's concerned, and I was always kind of reticent to knock on people's doors and stuff like that. But I have met a lot of people, especially in the Roundkey community.
Okay.
Over the years, I visited with Tommy Gerald in the early '70s, and through that, you got to know some people in the community, and so I've played, hung out a few times with Benton Flippin, whose music I love, and a lot of the accompanying musicians there, like Paul Sutphin and Erwin Clifton. Right now, I'm in the middle of a recording project, which is going to feature the music of two guys down there named Max Snow and Scotty East. And Scotty is a son of Ernest East, who was, are you familiar with
I don't know who he's
He was a great fiddler from Surrey County. He just played around there his whole life. He just died last year. And Scotty went around with his dad for years as the guitar player and one of the singers in the band, and he's just steeped in music. And Max Snow just knows all those same people whose music I loved. I mean, he knew Tommy really well. He knew Fred Cochran really, really well, Kyle Creed, and that whole gang. And they both sing and play guitar.
Right.
And so this guy named Ray Alden, who's a banjo player, has a little label called Chubby Dragon. He's kind of coordinating this whole project. We're doing a bunch of stuff featuring Mac and Scotty. That's there's not that many direct links to the past left now.
Yeah.
Melvin Wine is another one.
Right.
Who I taught at Augusta last summer, and Jerry Milnes is always really great about. Melvin lives about an hour away, and he'll get him and carry him over. And Melvin came into class and got him to play some tunes and had some nice conversation.
Sure.
It's sad to see that generation going, but at the same time, at least there's some people out there trying to keep the music going.
Right. How far afield do you think you could go musically on stage before you want to give a warning? You know, you're brought in here by AFTM for this concert. How many surprises? Do you ever think about how much can I surprise them before I say, you know, Tim, this is going to be, or Elizabeth, this is going to be a different kind of show because I've been into some different stuff and I want to tell you that ahead of time.
I so far, you know, when I go far afield, as you say, which is really not that far.
It's not that I don't hear it too much in your recordings at all, and I think you get away with the things you did last night without any problem introducing, you know, this is off an African tune or something like that. But
I have to just trust my gut that, you know, what ties together a lot of the music in my show is me.
Okay.
And I mean, you can listen to any one musician play in a bunch of different styles, and there's always something that pulls it together, and what pulls it together is their particular musical approach and personality.
Sure.
You know, there's a lot of polyrhythm in my fiddling.
Yeah.
It's so playing an African guitar, a polyrhythmic African guitar piece is not that far afield.
Right.
If you look at it that way, if you look at it in terms of people's expectations, well, this guy's a fiddler, and what's he doing playing African music? Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but I don't care about that.
Okay.
Nobody's complained.
Right. Right.
You know, and I'm always interested in hearing what people have to say about it. I mean, what I'm trying to do is develop a show that includes traditional music without compromising it, but also couching in some things that might be a little bit more accessible or interesting or unexpected. Unexpected is good, you know.
What do you think about the different contexts in which you play? As opposed to you're going to do a dance on Sunday night, you're sitting on a stage last night, and the stage is in some ways very alien to some of the things you do.
It's not designed. The music's not designed for stage.
Right. So does that pose any problems to you as a musician? Do you see ways in which?
Yeah. You see how much I tune my instruments?
Yeah.
I've gotten pretty fast at it, but it's, you know, this music is played in all kinds of different tunings, and that's a challenge. That's why I carry two fiddles.
Right. But is it? I guess nowadays just going in and doing the stage for the seated audience is an inevitability. Is it? It's kind of essential to make enough money. You can't do dance.
But it's not even making the money. It's how people expect to hear the music. That's how modern society expects for people to. That's how people expect to have art in their lives in modern societies. They expect it to be presented to them, and it wasn't always that way.
Okay.
You know, my parents drug me to the New York City Opera for a few years when I was a kid, and we'd dress up real nice and go to this beautiful hall in a state of great respect and sit there quietly while these people sang. And I found out years later that when opera was first developing, it was a real working class art form, and people would bring their kids and their picnic baskets of lunch and their dogs and their chickens and everything to these big amphitheaters, and they would yell comments at the singers as they told the story, and there was this whole discourse that went on. And I mean, I'd rather the music was presented like that, but the audience doesn't know how to do that.
Right. Okay.
We're too busy being polite and reverent. You know, it's the reverential nature of this thing that it kind of drives me crazy, because it drives the music industry, and it drives the relationship between the artist and the audience. And all I want to do when I get on a stage and do a show, Mike, is I want people to feel like they're in my house. I'm just, you know, I'm not trying to make people feel a certain way by talking about things like Palm Pilots or Jimi Hendrix tunes. I just decide I'm going to talk to people like I talk in my house, like I talk in my living room, you know, if I was just playing some tunes with some friends. And when I close my eyes, which as I do when I play a lot last night, I did open them a few times and had forgotten that there was anybody there. I want to get lost in this music. I figure if I can go there, then the audience can see me go there. That's the best way I have of giving them something, you know.
And I notice you haven't gone the route, and I've seen you a few times here at the Focal Lines, you haven't gone the route of string ties and
it's not my thing.
It's not, yeah.
You know, I have had to learn to dress a little bit better. but I would once again bring the music into the present. and I'm not a costume kind of guy. I would rather, I want to treat the music with respect. And so I think, a lot of times I'll put on a nice pair of shoes and a sport shirt.
Right.
It doesn't have to be dreary. And I have been accused of, in fact, I played a concert, a house concert with this guy in California. And I dressed up a little bit. And right before he opened the door to let everybody in, he looks at me, looks me up and down, he says, "I thought you stopped being an engineer." So I got a little bit to learn about that. I'm no Bob Carlin.
Yeah, I actually had that in mind. In your work with what we were talking about before, some of the older guys who people look at as the true authentics before us. Do you find that they care who they're working with, whether it's people like themselves or younger musicians or?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Give me for instance.
Was Tommy Jarrell or Melvin Wine concerned about playing things the old way or a certain way, or
they, enough to where they know what it is, very, very aware of where their music comes from. Mm-hmm. Tommy, for instance, used to play with his Uncle Charlie Lowe, who was a great, great banjo player, very well respected. And they played, for instance, they played a couple of tunes, but Sally Ann, which everybody around there plays, they call it the Surrey County National Anthem, was played traditionally as a two-part tune. And he and Uncle Charlie put a third part on it. And Tommy he plays two Sally Anns. He plays the old Sally Ann, and he plays the one that Uncle Charlie and me wrote. Okay. And he's very, he's very quick to tell you which one is which. Same thing with Step Back Cindy and a couple other tunes.
Okay, so he's not bothered by the changes though at all. They don't.
Not at all.
These people that are driven crazy by.
Not at all, and that's that's the difference to me between a revivalist and somebody that's playing the music kind of in the moment, in the present, right, in the context of their own life. I mean, there's room for both of those things, but the Canebrake Rattlers, for instance, you know that band? Oh. Pat Conte, who's Pat Conte's name. Pat Conte has the Secret Museum of Mankind, which was featured on Sunday morning on CBS a couple of weeks ago.
Singing out of Dirty Linen or somewhere. Yeah.
He and Bill Dilloff, a couple other guys, have had this band for many, many years. I mean, they were together when I was still living in New York City, and they had learned. I mean, their whole thing has been to play the music exactly like it was played, right, and they do a really good job of it. And they're great preservationists, and they're great musicians, and that's their approach to doing it. Right. But that's not my approach.
Even that approach, it would seem to me that exactly as it was played is nonetheless inevitably simply going to freeze it at one point in time that they decide is the point in time. Isn't necessarily how it was played 2 years before that.
Oh, you're right.
Or 2 years after that.
Well, go back to Ed Haley again. Yeah. Listen to his playing sometime, and listen to all them damn triplets in there. And then you do a little research and you find out that he was a real fan of ragtime. And then you start paying more attention, so that music made its way into his playing. That was pop music of his day. Right. And then you look a little bit more and you realize that a lot of the pop music styles had influence on the traditional musicians. They didn't care. Right. I mean, they knew, once again, they knew the history, what they were doing, they knew the sources, but they let any musician lets what's interesting is going to creep into their music whether they wanted to or not. Right. I mean, listen to all the kind of, what am I trying to say, ragtime, Dixieland chord progressions that made their way into old-time fiddle tunes, all that 1-6-2-5 stuff. It wasn't there in the 19th century. But tunes, Ted Gossett played Going to Jail. It's a rag in E. But he was a real traditional fiddler. Played all kinds of crooked phrase music and stuff like that. But he was probably just reacting to what he heard as coming up,
Sure. You've worked with the National Council of Traditional Arts, Joe Wilson's group. Yeah. I don't know if you would recall this, and it's something I dig out because I'm looking at all this old stuff. But Joe was enmeshed in the pages of Old Time Herald about a dozen years ago in this raging controversy with Mac Benford. Do you remember that? Okay. Okay. Now Joe, and I've talked to Joe, and Joe still, he said to me earlier this year, last year, he said, I'd write the same article today in the same way. And How does Joe, in your mind, how do you reconcile yourself to a guy who's got, in some ways, very stringent criteria, as Joe does? You're from the Bronx, for God's sakes.
What I have come to understand about Joe that I didn't understand before, I think the world of the guy. Joe grew up in a little place called Trade, Tennessee, as you might know. He's a real self-made guy, and grew up around this music and this culture, and it means everything to him. And when he inflicts that strict Joe Wilson criteria on things, I really think it's because he feels that there's people like me and others that have the worldliness and the savvy, the business savvy, to get ourselves out there. But these old mountain musicians, source musicians, if you will,
right,
are not going to be heard and not be presented to the world unless somebody like him makes the special effort. And so he's made a special effort to bring those people out. Now, that kind of thing is rife with personal opinion, his and other people's, the people that object to what he's doing and to his supporters. And it can be an irritant to people who are trying to make a living at traditional music, even though they come from the Bronx.
Right.
You know, and I've had to reconcile that with myself and kind of understand. But I think that Joe is doing a great thing, and I'm honored that he would, you know, he's started to involve me in some of what he's doing, and I'm totally honored about that.
And I'm wondering about that. Do you understand how Joe reconciles you and his internal beliefs?
I think Joe is smart enough to know that the music moves on,
okay,
and that he likes what he likes, and he sees value in however he does.
Right. We talked a little bit earlier about how I got motivated to do this by thinking that, okay, these great books written about the folk revival of the 60s, but somebody's got to tell a larger society that the same stuff is going on right now,
right.
Maybe in a quieter way. Do you think, though, that you could exist professionally as you do now?